Sorry, guys.
get this bigger then.
We're headed to St. Thomas in this small aircraft. Wish us luck.
I'm Philippe Cousteau, and the love of the ocean is in my blood.
That's incredible.
And I'm Ashlyn Cousteau. I'm a journalist and adventurer.
I'm the king of the world!
Together, we're hitting the high seas.
We're an awfully little boat and some awfully big seas right now.
In search of adventure, pirate treasure,
Yay! And more adventure.
I'm from the South. I can get my hands dirty.
Right.
You are Indiana Jones.
Who gets to try 200-year-old gin?
It's actually not bad.
My wife, ladies and gentlemen.
in these waters,
Come
X
here.
never
I'm
wants
never
the
giving you
spot.
the metal detector ever again.
And now,
She will.
we're investigating new twists
said
to
this
these
wasn't
age-old
glamorous?
tales.
We found a pirate ship!
It's time for rum.
Welcome, everyone, to the SIFMA Foundation Sustainability Influencer Series, Session 2 with Philippe Cousteau Jr. I'm Liz Rydell, the National Director of the SIFMA Foundation, and you're in for a treat this morning. This session could not come at a better time, as April is Financial Literacy Month and Earth Day is right around the corner on April 22nd. This session will explore ESG investing, the blue economy, and how students can begin the process of investing with their conscience. Our partners at New Day Impact will discuss investing for good and how growing one's investments can be synonymous with positively impacting the world. In addition to Philippe, who will also be joined by two remarkable young people, Maddie Cohey and Victor Yee. Maddie is currently a 7th grader at Barrington Middle School in Barrington, Rhode Island. She will lead our discussion with Philippe on the blue economy and how students can begin making a positive difference right now. Maddie is no stranger to socially responsible investing. In the spring of 2019, she was the national 2nd elementary school Invest Right winner with an essay focused on sustainability, specifically how Adidas is dedicated to cleaning our oceans. Victor Yee is an 18-year-old social entrepreneur and founder of Innova Youth, a global education nonprofit that empowers young people to develop their skills in research, collaboration, and communication with the goal of promoting societal change. Since its founding, Innova Youth has directly impacted over 10,000 students in 15 states, in 41 countries, with over 50 workshops and global summits on social responsibility, civic engagement, and Generation Z. Victor has been recognized by Tessie Ojo of the Princess Diana Award, Jackie Bezos of the Bezos Family Foundation, Bill Drayton of Ashoka, and more. Besides his work in Innova Youth, Victor also co-chairs the Our Echo Challenge through his work on Earth Echo International's Youth Leadership Council, leads Untextbooked, a Spotify-recognized history podcast, and works with Q Bottle on their corporate sustainability campaigns. And yes, you heard that correctly, he is only 18 years old. But before we jump right into our agenda, a couple of housekeeping items. Philippe will be taking questions from you, the audience. So please feel free to pose your questions in the chat box for questions that you have that you'd like for him to address at the end of the session. So to begin, we have a short overview of ESG investing, what it is, and how you can be thinking about getting involved.
I'm Melanie Mortimer, president of the SIFMA Foundation. Good morning. Thank you, Liz, for that fabulous introduction. The SIFMA Foundation's mission is to improve youth financial education, to increase capital markets literacy, and to expand economic mobility for youth of all backgrounds. Our portfolio of classroom educational programs have equipped 20 million students with academic enrichment, life skills, and a path to financial independence. We reach 600,000 students annually, including 300,000 girls, 250,000 students from economically disadvantaged communities, and more than 200,000 students of color each year. Drawing on the expertise of educators each year and the support of the financial industry, the SIFMA Foundation offers innovative programs that resonate with youth, connect to the real world, fulfill national and state education requirements, and meet educators' evolving needs with relevant coursework. This includes digital, remote, and blended education, STEM objectives, and socio-emotional learning, and more. Our signature program is the stock market game, which many of you know. It introduces students to the global capital markets through an integrated project-based curriculum and a dynamic online market simulation. Starting with a virtual cash account of $100,000, student teams strive to create the best performing portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and now impact investments. As they manage their online portfolios, they learn cooperation, communication, leadership, and they develop interest in following current events, as well as, of course, improving test scores in economics, math, and personal finance. In 2018, we partnered with New Day, an investing platform that allows users to invest in initiatives that matter, such as climate action, ocean health, animal welfare, and more. Together, we created the Stock Market Game Sustainability Index, and that allows students to invest in ESG stocks and learn about the power of aligning your values with your investing through impact investing. So now, in the name of continuing innovation, we're pleased to add the SIFMA Foundation Sustainability Influencer Series with our second conversation. Today, it's on the blue economy with New Day CEO Doug Heskey and Earth Echo's Philippe Cousteau Jr. As Liz said, we also have Victor and Maddie, who are going to be making it even more exciting and relevant to all of us in the classroom. The SIFMA Foundation Sustainability Influencer Series brings together leaders in environmental conservation, social activism, and youth engagement to discuss our shared responsibility to the global community and how our investment choices can be a catalyst for positive change. We look forward to a terrific conversation today, starting with our friend Doug Heskey, CEO of New Day. Doug is an award-winning business leader. He has more than 25 years of investment management and wealth management leadership. Prior to joining New Day as CEO, he ran the private client business for Stone & Youngberg, a leading responsible public finance organization. And much earlier in his career, he built an impact and responsible investment platform for Piper Jaffray, among many other accomplishments. Most importantly, Doug is an advocate for youth, for investor education, and for impact investing, which is what brought him to us several years ago to make the sustainability index possible in the stock market game and to make this influencer series and today possible. So with deep gratitude and much friendship, I'd like to hand it over to Doug Heskey to take us through the next stage of today's presentation. Thank you.
Melanie, thank you so very much for the very warm introduction. I'd like to start this morning's session with a shout out to Victor and Maddie. It's not often you find youth as engaged as these two individuals are, and the accomplishments that they have made are truly extraordinary. I am so pleased to be a part of the second SIFMA Impact Influencer Series event. What an exciting month it's been for not just for New Day, but for the entire cause of sustainability. We just wrapped up Water Conservation Month. We are in the midst of Financial Literacy Month and approaching the 51st anniversary of Earth Day on April 22nd. And we are marching down towards a really important event coming up in June, which is World Oceans Day. I can't imagine a better way to be honoring the amazing educational work that both the SIFMA Foundation and Earth Echo International are doing to support SDGs number 6, clean water and sanitation, and SDG number 14, life below water, than through this incredibly important impact event focused on oceans, water, sustainability, and the blue economy. The intersection of the work of the SIFMA Foundation, New Day Impact, and Earth Echo International, represented by today's special guest, Philippe Cousteau, could not be any more important. The ocean covers nearly 3/4 of our planet. Oceans play a central role in the health of the world's ecosystem and provide countless benefits to our planet and all of the Earth's creatures. Its waters assist in the regulation of global chemistry and climate and are home to more than 2 million species of fish today. Food harvested from our seas provides food to more than 4 billion people around the world. It is for this reason that New Day Impact is so focused on finding solutions to heal and revitalize our ocean ecosystem by protecting ocean and marine habitats through the safeguarding of biodiversity, maintaining ecosystem stability, and reducing negative impacts like overfishing and pollution. New Day Impact and Earth Echo International have teamed up with the SIFMA Foundation to provide education to millions of young people and other responsibly minded investors about ocean health and more broadly sustainability. Before we turn to the issue of oceans and water, I'd like to say a few words about the importance of our collaborative work with the SIFMA Foundation and the National Stock Market Game. It was more than 20 years ago that I first got involved, and boy, have things changed. The world of investing was quite different back then, and companies were largely focused on the concept of shareholder capitalism, oftentimes driving profitability at any expense. But something has changed over the last decade, and something very, very significant. The world has woken up to the fact that there is a real cost associated with unconscious capitalism. Companies and their executives are now paying attention to the voices of younger people, which now represent today more than 40% of American purchasing power. And these consumers are voting with their dollars. As a result, there's been a new focus within the capital markets over the past years on ESG, or environmental, social, and governance investing. In fact, we shattered all previous records in 2020, having attracted more than $54 billion of new investment into ESG, or socially responsible funds. And this is for very good reason. Study after study has demonstrated that investors no longer have to sacrifice investment returns to invest for good. But not everybody has recognized the merits of values-based investing, which is why we do the work at New Day and why SIFMA does its work. In fact, the financial services industry was slow to respond, and not all clients had the same access to education and investment products that align values with investing. It was for this reason that we created New Day. New Day's involvement in the national stock market game came about as a result of the determination that we, all of us, must be doing more to find solutions to these seemingly intractable problems. And that by owning these companies in investment portfolios, you can generate alpha, or additive returns, above what a stock index might deliver. After all, making good investments is about selecting good companies, and great companies are most often the ones that are responsible members of the corporate community. They don't pollute, they take great care of other stakeholders in the community, like their customers, their employees, their suppliers. New Day's work is to identify which companies fall into this classification and why, and we invest our client dollars into these companies. New Day has furnished a list of these companies to the national stock market game for the past 3 years that are a part of the co-branded or co-created index for the SIFMA Foundation. So I want to talk for a moment about ESG investing and how it's different from what's been done in the past. Environmental, social, and governance refers to 3 central factors in measuring the sustainability and societal impacts of an investment in a company or business. Analysis of these criteria are thought by some to help to better determine the future financial performance of companies. ESG investing is not just socially responsible investing, but an improved version. SRI, socially responsible investing, is exclusionary, sifting out companies that are identified as sin type companies that might not necessarily align with your values. Companies that manufacture firearms, tobacco, sometimes alcohol, and even fossil fuel companies. Conversely, ESG investing, or environmental social governance investing, is a method for evaluating at every stage of the investment process how companies' environmental, social, and governance practices may impact their stock return potential and value. Many recent studies have demonstrated that taking into account companies' ESG practices can positively contribute to investment returns, help reduce risk, and drive shareholder value. Environmental, social, and governance refers to the three central factors in measuring the sustainability of societal impacts for companies. So obviously, impact and responsible investing has evolved from where we started a number of years ago. Up until lately, it's been, as I would describe, an evolution, not revolution, but things have changed over the past 5 years. And the support for ESG has shifted into overdrive over the last year, partly due to COVID, and mostly due to the recognition that these problems that we are trying to solve for need to be solved faster. Companies like Hewlett-Packard used 1 million pounds of recycled ocean plastics in their packaging in 2019. Hewlett-Packard is not alone. One of the largest toy manufacturers in the world, Hasbro, are phasing out plastic packaging. Dell Technologies has created a new supply chain that recovers ocean-bound plastics, putting them into their packaging. And Levi's has saved more than 4.2 billion liters of water from its finishing process, enough to fill 1,680 Olympic-sized swimming pools. They also recycled more than 9 billion gallons or liters of water more as a part of their process. While I have always had a role in the responsible investment pace, I've come from the traditional wealth and asset management world. And over this period of time, I, with my colleagues, witnessed the fact that investors with lower levels of financial affluence and influence didn't have the same access to financial products that encompass their values into investments. This is what led us to founding New Day. It is my honor and distinct privilege to introduce our partner, Philippe Cousteau, and Earth Echo International, who is an important partner for New Day. Philippe is the co-founder of Earth Echo International, a nonprofit 501c3 organization founded in 2005 with his sister, Alexandra Cousteau. If Philippe's name rings familiar, it's for very good reason. While he is the grandson of the legendary explorer Jacques Cousteau, Philippe is an incredibly accomplished oceanographer, environmental activist, and award-winning author who earned an Emmy Award nomination for his syndicated science series, Awesome Planet. Earth Echo provides knowledge and tools to empower youth around the world to drive meaningful environmental action to protect and restore our ocean planet, reaching more than 2 million people in 146 countries. They empower the next generation to become environmental leaders who will transform the future. So without further ado, I'd like to pass things off to Maddie, who's going to conduct today's interview with both Philippe and Victor. Thank you very much, and glad to have everybody as a part of the Impact Influencer series for SIFMA.
Hi. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Doug.
How are you?
Maddie, I'm terrific. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm really excited. I've heard so much about your work with Earth Echo and your book, and I'm so excited to be here.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with us. Doug, that was a terrific introduction. And thank you to the entire team at SIFMA, and Sarah and Liz, Melanie, everybody for having us and putting this together this morning. I'm really thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so I know that you've done so many cool things in your life and you've traveled like so many places. So I was wondering if you could speak about how you first got involved with ocean exploration and the idea of the blue economy.
Well, my journey in ocean exploration and conservation goes back a long way. It's almost to the beginning for me of my life, and even two generations before that. You heard Doug explain my grandfather, Jacques Cousteau, was a filmmaker and explorer and co-inventor of scuba diving, opened the world's eyes to the ocean 70 years ago, and went on to make documentaries and explore the ocean in a way no one had ever seen before. My father followed in that work and made documentaries and explored the ocean for decades as well, until he had an accident, unfortunately, a tragic airplane accident in 1979, where he passed away a few months before I was born. Nevertheless, I grew up with his films and his books, and my grandfather I knew, and they had a tremendous influence on me in recognizing, fundamentally the ocean is the life support system of this planet, and it's absolutely critical to our survival. And as we've become more advanced and more sophisticated as a species on Earth, and our economies become more advanced, we've started to realize that the types of things that Doug was talking about the importance of sustainability and investing, applies to how we leverage economically the ocean, and how important the ocean is to our economy, and how we have historically, not unlike the investment approach that Doug was talking about, that was more exploitative and destructive than constructive. We have done essentially the same to the ocean. And so really the idea of the blue economy is understanding the contribution that the ocean makes to us, and how important that is to go hand in glove with the idea of conservation and exploration in the ocean.
Yeah, so I know you just spoke a little bit about how important it is, but I know a lot of people aren't aware of how important it is, and you talked about how critical it was. So can you explain a little bit more about how important it is?
Yeah, so specifically the blue economy, think of all the different things. There were some slides earlier Liz shared it. Think of all the things that are related to the ocean and how it contributes to to our economy. That's seafood, fisheries, and that's a massive contributor, and that would be part of the blue economy. Tourism, any tourism in coastlines or anything that has to do with the ocean is part of the blue economy. When you think about shipping, energy production, that's all part of the blue economy. Also, though, other elements, things like carbon mitigation, arguably also part of the blue economy. The ocean is a huge carbon sink. And so the functions that the ocean provide to us that allow our planet to work, allow life to exist on this planet, those kinds of functions that we would otherwise have to pay for, things like carbon sequestration, or things like mitigation from storms by mangroves and coral reefs that help absorb storm surge from hurricanes and typhoons, all of those functions that the ocean provides to us for free are essentially part of the blue economy, because otherwise we would have to pay for them. And a couple interesting numbers here. The ocean, it's estimated, provides close to $3 trillion of value to the global economy every year. On the flip side, as we're degrading the ocean, it's thought, because of the loss in function, the loss of fisheries, 90% of our world's fisheries are overfished, and unsustainable and collapsing. 90%, think about that. And so if we continue on this path, it's estimated by 2050 that instead of providing $3 trillion worth of value to the global economy, the ocean, because of the loss of food, the loss of its functions in protecting coastlines, et cetera, could cost the global economy $500 million. And by the end of the century, could be costing us $2 trillion. And so think about that. At the beginning of the century, the ocean was providing $3 trillion of value to the global economy. And by the end of the century, it could be costing us $2 trillion. That's a $5 trillion flip every year. Wow. If we don't change how we think about our ocean and how we restore these elements of the blue economy. There was a really important point that Doug made earlier, and Liz as well earlier on in the slideshow, that the idea of sustainability is to meet the needs of the present without degrading the ability of future generations to meet their needs. And we failed at that, frankly. In my lifetime, I'm 41, we have lost half the world's biodiversity. Half of it has just gone away. 90% of fisheries are overfished. Entire coastlines, coral reefs are collapsing. I mean, there's a lot of bad news out there. And that's why today is so important. And that's why the idea of how we engage a whole new generation to recognize the power that they have, to engage in positive ways, the kinds of things that Doug was talking about, ESG investing, with respect to the blue economy, to start looking at how the blue economy can work for us, how we can restore fisheries, how we can use renewable energy, not exploitative elements of the blue economy like fossil fuels and natural gas, et cetera, but instead renewable sources of energy in the blue economy like offshore wind, or how we can look at sustainable aquaculture, or how we can look at any number of different elements. And using innovation, there's work now that's looking at algae, how algae can replace plastics, traditional plastics. That's part of the blue economy. So there's so many different ways that we can engage with the blue economy that are restorative and hopeful. And that's really what today's about.
Yeah, so how would you say the youth can play a role in restoring the environment and ocean, maybe through social entrepreneurship and the blue economy? And why is education so important?
Yeah, so education is vital. We founded Earth Echo with a belief that young people, as you saw that quote earlier, are not just the leaders of tomorrow, they're the leaders of today. And we work with young people all over the world. And Victor's going to be joining us here just a minute to chat, because we do a lot of work on leadership training, on education, and because we recognize that today young people have a level of sophistication that is unparalleled. We see young people passing laws, raising money, starting businesses, doing really extraordinary work that is, again, recognizing our role and our responsibility to not just sustain the ocean. We want to get away from sustainability. Let's wipe that idea out of our minds, because we don't want to sustain a world where half the biodiversity has disappeared. We don't want to sustain a world where 90% of fisheries are overfished, where half the world's coral reefs are dying. We want to renew the world. And that's the good news, is that we can invest in things for the blue economy. One example is seaweed and kelp aquaculture, where you're seeing communities, people that are out of work, fishermen and fisher folk along coastlines, where, for example, up in Maine, because of climate change, the lobster fishery is slowly migrating north to colder water because the ocean's getting warmer. And unfortunately, that's into Canada. So American lobster fisher folk can't follow them, right? And so fundamentally, they're out of work. And so what they're doing is they're growing kelp and seaweed off the coast and harvesting that for food and for energy and for cosmetic products. And that's providing supplemental income to these folks that are out of work. And that kelp is a carbon sink, provides habitat for animals in the ocean, and is something that is very a positive way of farming the ocean, a sustainable and more than a restorative way of farming the ocean. So that's one example. There's work afoot in all over the world doing the same type of thing, restoring mangroves that, 1 square acre of mangroves absorbs more carbon than a square acre of rainforest. We talk about the Amazon all the time, and it's a critical habitat. We forget that mangroves are actually better carbon absorbers than rainforests. And so those are just some examples of how we need to be thinking about restorative action. And young people get that. They're the ones that are taking those kinds of actions. And so today it's incumbent upon us to provide the tools and the resources, because young people are such an enormous part of the population. They have such enormous influence on the world. And together, moving forward to restore the ocean, nothing can stop them.
Yeah, so I know that's a lot about what your work with Earth Echo is doing. So can you tell us a little bit more about Earth Echo and why social entrepreneurship is part of your youth leadership strategy?
So, Earth Echo International, again, founded 15 years ago. Our mission is to build a global youth movement to restore and protect our ocean planet. Because remember, we live on an ocean planet. Ocean regulates our climate. Climate change is an ocean problem. We oftentimes forget that. We talk about climate change and land-based solutions to climate change, but climate change is an ocean problem because the ocean regulates our climate. We talk about how the ocean provides food to billions of people, how it provides oxygen. Half the oxygen in our atmosphere comes from the ocean. And so fundamentally, we oftentimes forget that the ocean is central to solving the environmental and conservation crisis that we face. And so Earth Echo is really about building a global youth movement to return the ocean to the center of the conversation and to restore the ocean. And that we can do. And it's exciting work, and it's important work. And ESG and investing in the idea of social entrepreneurship is part of that, because we want to give every tool that we can to young people, recognizing that different young people have different interests. We see young people who are amazing public speakers and communicators and writers, and we see young people who are really writing legislation and involved in politics. We see young people who are also starting businesses, and that's where Victor's coming in here now to share some time with us and talk a little bit about his work, because we wanted you to hear from a young person who's done extraordinary work in the entrepreneurship space. Because starting businesses that leverage and restore the blue economy, thinking about just investment period, and shopping is politics, how we spend our money with companies that recognize their responsibility to renew and restore the planet, as opposed to those companies that are continuing to degrade and destroy the planet for their own profit. And so the spending power that we have through, and the understanding of that through financial literacy, and the opportunity that we have to leverage our minds and our imaginations to start businesses that restore and protect the environment and make money at the same time, it's a huge part of the strategy.
Yeah, so I heard Melanie and Liz talking a little bit about how April is Financial Literacy Month. And why would you say that's important to you? And how can students who are interested in social entrepreneurship and the blue economy get involved now?
Well, that's a perfect segue to Victor, and having Victor join us, because it's really about recognizing all the different tools. I mean, the stock market game is a great example. The resources that New Day brings to the table is a great example of how we can learn about ESG investing, entrepreneurship, and the power of the money that we have, and the money that we can invest, and the influence we have on the people around us, our parents, our friends, whatever, and how they think about the economy and how they think about shopping and investing and all those different things that can have a huge influence. But Victor is the man, and such an amazing guy who inspires me. So we're really lucky to have him join us today. And I would love to hear his point on that, because he can really speak to what influenced him and what inspired him, having just graduated from high school, to have already achieved so many extraordinary things.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maddie. And also thank you so much, Philippe, for the amazing conversation and introduction so far. I've always been interested in moving forward beyond what school could provide me with those opportunities and experiences. And this is why you are exactly here today, to be working in fields of investing and also learning a little bit more about social impact, corporate responsibility, and also determining how you can determine your own passions and interests to another level. For me in high school and also middle school, I've always found myself to be looking beyond what was found in school textbooks and also curriculum that teachers were teaching me. I always saw that there was so much beyond the world of current events, what's happening around the world, what campaigns that companies are working on, that seemed interesting and also important to our world, especially for our generation. So in terms of all the work that I've been doing, from environmental sustainability with Earth Echo, all the way towards running a nonprofit that is geared towards helping young people start social impact projects, I realized that there's a lot of opportunity for young people not to just see the interest that they have in particular subjects matters and whatnot that kind of get them excited and pumped on an everyday scale, but also allows them to actually focus on community-based solutions that actually get them to start from someplace small. And that is where like the spark comes through with working along with the team, finding an idea that is really solution-based and provides some sort of systemic level impact towards our local community. It can be something as small as recycling or as something as big as plastic ocean cleanup or other particular issues that you care about, and then actually growing that movement so that you, along with other young people, can start to jump on the idea that you don't have to just be in school to be a change maker, that there's so many opportunities for you not to only see the value in investing and also seeing the growth in which we can really make the world a better place, but also to do that in a way that is sustainable and also in a way that for all of us is going to make a bigger difference for the future generations.
Yeah, so I was wondering, like, for both of you, what advice would you give students who want to pursue social entrepreneurship in the future? Like, what steps could they take? Maybe what should they study in college? Stuff like that.
Victor, I'm going to let you jump in on this one. You're a lot closer to high school and college than I am.
Yeah, no worries. Of course, I think the first thing to realize is that social entrepreneurship is not a specific field that anyone just has to specifically go into. It should be everyone's mindset that one is a social entrepreneur and that you don't have to be a certain segue or pathway in order to become one. The whole idea of social entrepreneur is to really innovate, create, be creatively minded, and also really think about ways in which you can bring value to the world in a different perspective. So through that particular example, you as a young person yourself, Maddie, can really look at issues in your own local community, face different values, and look, I think I want to think about it more as a think globally and act locally in this perspective. You want to first look at all the problems around the world that you have been frustrated or super interested in, that like have not been addressed in school. And you want to start brainstorming that down and talk with your friends, speak with your mentors, your teachers, your closest friends, advisors, parents about some of the closest problems that you think you can address just by the simple idea of actually exposing yourself to that idea. And by actually brainstorming solutions from the ground up, working with teachers, adults, allies, and also creating your own project, that gives you a first step into what you think is the social entrepreneurship world. Remember that social entrepreneurship is a blend of being a socially good person and also making money at the same time. So through that particular example, you're not going to go wrong at all, and actually is the best way for us to ensure that our world is going to be sustainable in the future. So that's the exact way. And I think that throughout college, you don't need to study anything in particular, but also have the lens as a social entrepreneur. So that whether if you're studying English or whether if you're studying sciences or whether you're studying humanities or social sciences, that you keep in mind that everything that you'll be doing in the future is going to matter, particularly in a way that is going to bring social entrepreneurship to the face of other young people that are going to see the light and also be inspired by your work as someone that is not only interested in investing in general, but also wants to dive deeper into the motions of kind of systemic level impact. So that's what I would say. And you,
Yeah.
Philippe?
I would add that being informed and learning about these types of issues is really important. And that's where resources like, for example, at Earth Echo and why we work with SIFMA and the terrific work SIFMA does and stock market game, understanding first the financial literacy, but then also the issues themselves about, for example, the ocean and the environment. So we at Earth Echo have our Youth Action Network. We have a network of young people from around the world. We have our Youth Leadership Council, which Victor's a member. We have lots of resources to help young people come together as a community because as Victor said, find other people that care about these types of issues, create groups and friends, bring people together and learn. And I'll give you two examples of some of the things that our youth leaders have done. Victor might have another example to share, but one of our youth leaders down in Florida realized that a lot of our food, 40% of the food we grow is wasted, and started this concept and just ends up in landfills. And we've lost all those nutrients and all of that stuff. And so we started a composting project in South Florida that's become a booming business in South Florida and made, is a business that was a problem in his community, but it was also a global issue, like Victor mentioned. And he started to realize that he could create these places where people could bring their food and compost it, and then he would sell that compost. And they would get it, people that dropped off food get some, but he's also able to sell that into the wider community. We've seen young people also do projects where simple things just to raise money for nonprofits in their classrooms. You don't have to start a business to be a social entrepreneur. You can be a social entrepreneur in middle school. We've got kids that make seed postcards, where it's pressed paper with seeds in them and then put art and drawing on them and sell them to raise money for nonprofits. That's essentially being a social entrepreneur. So, it runs the gamut from any kind of idea that you can think of that's help solving bigger problems, but in your community. And that's really, really important that I want everyone to remember that it's as Victor said, it's a mindset about how we build our society and our economy going forward in a way that helps people, helps the planet, brings opportunities for justice, for health, etc.
Yeah. So, where do you guys see the blue economy in the next 10 to 20 years?
I see big opportunities in the blue economy, particularly in a couple places. One is energy, offshore wind energy, for example. The wind blows stronger and longer offshore than it does on land because there's no obstructions, there's no mountains, no trees to slow it down. Offshore wind is a massive opportunity to get ourselves to the carbon-free future we need, fossil fuel-free future we need. We have, we're looking at a lot of food. I was talking about a lot of kelp and seaweed aquaculture is a booming business as a restorative and helpful, positive business, unlike some aquaculture that is really polluting. We also look at some of the innovative tools that are out there that, as I mentioned earlier, where they're looking at things like algae as replacements for plastic, creating plastic out of algae that's truly biodegradable under any circumstances. So those are some of the new innovative things. Victor?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. Specifically in sustainable agriculture is going to be a super big industry in which we can fulfill. Also into specific ideas such as biomimicry of like building the future of cities, and also making sure that we're plastic free, and also understanding that we as environmentalists, not only just I think the term environmentalist, but anyone that lives on the surface of the planet realizes the importance that oceans play in any particular facet of our lives, from tourism all the way to people traveling, to people, getting food from the ocean. So all of those particular industries, I think, will be definitely expanded and increased in a way that is going to have big influence and awareness for especially our generation to realize that every tip of our lives are going to be affected by oceans. So that's what I think would be influenced by the blue economy.
Yeah, thank you. And I have one more question. So if you were to have everyone do one small thing to benefit the blue economy and the economy in general, what would it be?
I would say, we want to look at one small thing. Wow. I'm going to take two. One is to join the Earth Echo Action Network, Youth Action Network, because there's so many tools and resources there and so much knowledge and other young people that are doing amazing things you can learn from, that's just a one-stop shop for you to get engaged on this issue. If you wanted a consumer choice at home, we don't eat seafood at home. There's a lot of seafood that's overfished, it's at 90%. And so the consumer choices we have, that's a place that we could make better choices, all of us, is in being informed and using resources out there like the Monterey Seafood Watch Guide to see what kind of seafood we should be eating and shouldn't be eating. And in general, probably it'd be a good thing to try and cut down on our seafood consumption considerably. That would be one easy thing at home to do from a consumer perspective. And then join the Earth Echo Action Network. Like I said, just go to earthecho.org/youth and you can find everything you need there. Victor?
Yeah, I think one thing that I would particularly kind of encourage young students to do is to be more aware of what is happening around oceans by watching more documentaries and films, and also particular experiences that are through video that would actually showcase the actual impacts in which is happening right now, whether they're adverse or whether they're positive on our society. I know there are a couple of documentaries such as Seaspiracy and also a couple of other particular films that could show you the actual ground level work that is being done in terms of the harmful effects, or also what people are doing to now reverse that particular system. So just by looking up ocean understanding and climate sustainability will help you tremendously when it comes to an understanding of the ocean, so that you can better be engage in conversations and discourse when you're either in your classroom or with friends or with anyone that wants to talk about the future of sustainability.
Thank you. It was really nice talking to you guys.
Maddie, thank you. It was terrific. What a great questions, great follow-up. You did a terrific job.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maddie. Appreciate you.
And then I think, so I think we're roughly we're running a little bit late, Liz, but a few minutes over, but we do I'm looking forward to the Q&A part of all this.
Oh, this will be fun, Philippe. We've got some good ones for you. So to remind the people who are in the session, feel free, if you have any questions, type them in your chat box and I'll sort through them. This first one I like. So Philippe, in your new book, Oceans for Dummies, you cover some really cool sea creatures. What's your favorite?
My favorite is definitely the octopus. And I actually have a copy of the book right here. Always now, I even use it still as a reference myself. There's so much good stuff in here. Even though we wrote it, I forget some of it. Octopus are just such extraordinary animals. If anyone has seen the documentary on Netflix about octopus, My Octopus Teacher, it's a great example of just how smart and how dynamic and how exciting and extraordinary these animals are, particularly since they only live for about a year. So I would say octopus are my favorite. Victor?
I would definitely say the dolphin is something that is super amazing. I think people underestimate the intelligence that they have. when it comes to their interaction with other particular members of their family, or also how they migrate from one place to another. So that's my favorite animal.
Awesome. And Philippe, I echo the octopus teacher. It was amazing. So good.
It's great. Fun.
We have one that actually is the first one that came in, and this one actually came in before our session yesterday. So how has the pandemic positively or negatively impacted the health of the oceans? And what did we learn over the last year or so that can be used going forward?
The pandemic has had a couple interesting impacts on the ocean. One in particular has been, and I think we've all seen it on social media and in the press, it's kind of given a breather because it's certainly reduced the amount of traffic on the ocean. It's reduced the amount of carbon going into the atmosphere, which is of course largely absorbed by the ocean. It's also cut back on a lot of the fishing activity in the ocean. On the flip side, negative impacts though is also because there's fewer legitimate and lawful eyeballs on the ocean and people out there and spending time. It's also allowed for a lot of people who are bad actors, who are overfishing and engaging in destructive behavior, to kind of have free reign. Illegal, unreported, and unsustainable fishing is a massive problem in the ocean right now. There's a lot of folks out there that are doing really bad things to line their pockets now at all of our expense. And those people have had somewhat of a free reign this past year. So that's of concern. But on the flip side, as I said, in a lot of places, for example, in Hawaii, the humpback whales are thriving because there's not as many boats out on the water when they're trying to raise their calves, offshore of Maui. There aren't all the ferries and the whale watching boat and all the stuff that are constantly, driving on top of them for people to take pictures. Same thing off of Washington State and all over the world. So it's been a mixed bag, I think, overall. But one of the things that I hope we've all taken away from this is that scientists have been warning us about a pandemic for decades. We have ignored that largely, and we are unprepared, and it's cost our global economy $20+ trillion and countless lives and suffering. There's another crisis scientists have been warning about for us for decades, and that's climate change and ocean collapse. So I do hope and I do believe that people have started to go, uh-oh, maybe we do need to be listening to the science. Maybe we do need to be thinking about these big problems because they are happening. They are going to come and get us, and they are getting us. And we need to do something about it. Particularly young people, I think we've seen an elevated element of awareness about this issue. We've seen young people turning out to vote on climate and vote on the environment more than ever before. It was a determining factor in the latest presidential election here in the US. And so from that perspective, I think it's raised the element, it's raised the bar in terms of awareness and people wanting to take action.
Okay, we have another one. If you could ask the average American to do just a couple of things to protect the oceans and our water quality, what would you ask us to do? Are plastics one of the biggest threats?
Plastics are an enormous threat. I mean, it's 8 to sometimes some people say, 10 million tons of plastic a year going into the ocean. That's at least a single garbage truck full of ocean dumping into the dumping raw plastic into the ocean every minute. Or that's the equivalent of. So plastics are a problem. We've got 1 to 200 million tons in the ocean already. There's thousands of pieces of plastic in every square kilometer of ocean. Particularly concentrated in those places like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and the other gyres that exist in the different parts of the world's ocean. So I would say plastic is an enormous problem. Pollution in general as well continues to be a huge problem. Agricultural pollution from unsustainable agriculture. Also just a human, problems around human waste and lack of sewage and et cetera management is still a huge problem. And of course, carbon, the ocean is getting warmer and it's because the ocean absorbs heat and the ocean absorbs that carbon dioxide. So it's becoming warmer and it's becoming more acidic. And those two things combined are what's causing these kind of freak weather issues, the climate change, all of these bigger problems. And when we talk about climate change, that changes obviously our weather because climate is weather over the long term. Our weather is weather over the short term. And over the long term, the Earth's atmosphere is warming. That means that currents are changing, air currents, ocean currents are changing, which means rainfall and weather that we rely on to feed our crops and for food, et cetera, is changing. So we're seeing more droughts, or we're seeing more extreme rains. So we're seeing all these types of problems that are already happening now. And that's of big concern. So I think we need to really wake up and recognize that there's a lot of big problems that we're facing that are threatening our very survival, but that we can do something about. And that's, the message here too, is that, we're on course politically and economically to recognize the importance of our investments, to recognize the importance of our politics, to recognize the importance of our consumer spending and our actions, that we can build a sustainable future if we come together to do it.
And I like this question, especially since it's Financial Literacy Month. What is the one piece of information you wish you had been shared with about finance that you feel would have made a difference in your life? So one piece of information you wish was shared with you about finance that would have made a difference in your life.
I have to think about that one. It was so long ago when I was younger. Victor, why don't you take this one and I'll think for a second.
I mean, I think I wish I knew that I can invest or be, I think, someone that is managing my money wisely in a way in which I can continue to support nonprofits and other foundations that can really make a difference in our world. I think that finance is seen as something that is very concrete and it's transactional. But I think in many ways in which we invest and also, keep in charge of our own money, that we can actually spend a lot of those onto things that we care about and also causes that we would like to really support. So having that said, I wish that I had known that I could do more for supporting various charities, foundations, nonprofits work that are really making a difference in the world.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, looking back when I was young, ESG really wasn't much of a thing. I didn't even know it existed. I didn't even know what any of it was about. There's so many more tools and resources now for young people than there existed when I was in high school and middle school. So that we just weren't even talking about it, financial literacy. Like it just wasn't even a topic back then. So even having an access to a fraction of what exists now, I wish I had.
And I think Doug alluded to that as well, is back even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, ESG just wasn't mainstream. And now students have just so much more exposure to be able to, again, have their money work for them in a positive way.
Yeah.
So I like this one too. And I think we're closing out on time, but I like this one. Philippe, what is the best advice a mentor ever gave you? I like that.
My grandfather was a mentor to me. And one of the things I always marveled at my grandfather is he was one of the most famous people in the world. And yet when people came up to him, would to ask him for advice, ask for thoughts, he was always patient and kind and humble. And I think that humility is really, really important. And that true strength comes from lifting up those around us and empowering those around us. We've seen in our public discourse a lot of bullying, a lot of negativity, and by very powerful people. And in some ways, one might take that as a means as acceptable behavior or as an acceptable path to power. It's not. Strength doesn't come from bullying others or hurting others or calling others names. Strengths come from supporting other people and having humility and empowering others. And that was something my grandfather always talked to me about, and he practiced himself. And I think that's important for all of us to remember in this era of bombastic television and news and all the things that we see out there, that isn't strength. That's weakness and cowardice when you belittle others and hurt others. Strength is helping others and lifting others up.
Okay. Now, Victor, you are set for a bright future. Do you have any words or things that a mentor has kind of showed you or you keep in the back of your mind?
Yes, I do. I think the first thing that I always hear from mentors is to stay optimistic about the world in which we live in, because I think there's so much happening around. And when we, as young people, are often intertwined in a lot of the greatest challenges of our century, it seems quite overwhelming at times, with the pandemic or with various issues and conflicts around the world. But I think it's very important to realize that there's so much going for us as a generation and also just personally that can really help us get to the next level when it comes to our goal setting or also what we would like to achieve, hopefully in our futures, and also see ourselves as a way in which we can better serve as global citizens. And so I think that, when we are always working on, the amazing work that you guys are all doing with SIFMA and also just all the various work that you guys are doing outside of school and inside of school as well, just to really stay optimistic about the ways in which you're getting involved and know that your investments and also your involvements in everything will pay off. And so that's something that I would definitely encourage and inspire young people to do.
Yeah, I would add to that. It's a terrific point, Victor. If anything, if we've learned anything or been reminded of anything during this past year of coronavirus and COVID, et cetera, it's that community really matters. And I want to tell every young person out there that there's a community of young people that care about the planet out there. One of them is the Earth Echo Youth Action Network, but there are others as well. So join communities, find other young people that care about this, and build that community and learn from each other and find camaraderie and hope with each other, because we are community creatures, human beings. We need community, we crave community, as we've all been reminded during coronavirus, and there are communities out there. So find those, be a part of those, and you can do extraordinary things. I have tremendous hope for the future every single day because of the work we do with young people. And so thank you for what you're doing, all of you watching, and thank you for what you will do.
Well, with that, thank you so much, Philippe. Thank you, Victor. I want to give a thank you to Maddie as well. Truly inspirational. It was really, we are so thankful that you were able to join us for financial.
Maddie was terrific. Yeah. Victor, thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
and everybody for joining us.
So I am, with that, I'm going to turn it back to Melanie Mortimer to close us out. Yes.
Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you to our speakers, Philip, Maddie, Victor, Doug, and also to folks behind the scenes, Sarah Bryant, Perrine Kohlhaas, Carolyn Quest, Vincent Young, and the rest of the team at the SIFMA Foundation, at New Day, and at Earth Echo. And to all of you for viewing today and joining a great conversation on the blue economy and impact investing. ESG has been brought to the forefront globally, and it is here to stay. ESG investments enable people like you and me to invest in companies that support the causes that we care about. And they're getting more and more popular in the marketplace, comprising a third of total US assets under management today. As Philippe mentioned, we've lost half of the world's biodiversity, but you can join a new generation that renews the world. This includes investing in support of the blue economy. You can also learn more about the blue economy and the exciting work of Earth Echo, including conversations they've had even with the White House, by visiting earthecho.org. You can also join the Water Challenge to help raise awareness of water protection. And if you're in grades 5 through 9, you can join the Our Echo Challenge. For youth leaders ages 15 to 22, you can apply to be selected for the very competitive Earth Echo Youth Leadership Council, which is an international team of young environmental leaders. Finally, you can get started today with your stock market game portfolio and New Day sustainable stocks at www.stockmarketgame.org. Thank you again, everyone. I want to remind you to invest in yourselves, invest in your education, invest in action, and invest in a world that is inclusive, that is vibrant, and is one that you want to be the future that you live in. So thank you again, and I hope you all have enjoyed today's session.